Anyone want to kick us off with some questions? Or we can wait for someone to show up who may have one. I know you guys have all scheduled your one-on-ones or gone through your
Mhm.
one-on-ones.
Um, I have a question. I could probably look it up myself, but since we're here,
Sure,
uh, the Bootstrap, the columns and rows, is that the Bootstrap grid system?
it is.
It is,
Yes.
okay. And that uses Flexbox?
As of Bootstrap 4, it used Flexbox. As of Bootstrap 5, it may be using CSS Grid or Flexbox. I'm not quite sure. CSS Grid is a somewhat newer version of CSS that has built that grid functionality right into CSS. But I find that the learning curve on Bootstrap Grid and the flexibility that it provides you is still worth using Bootstrap Grid over CSS Grid itself. So Bootstrap Grid upgraded before, so going all the way back to Bootstrap 3, which was the first version of Bootstrap that I used, it used media queries and percentage widths to make it work. And then when it went to Bootstrap 4, it started using Flexbox, which was a newer version of a CSS layout engine. And then when it went to Bootstrap 5, I am not sure if they upgraded to CSS Grid or if they're still using Flexbox under the hood. But CSS Grid's super powerful and you can build all kinds of grid layout engines using it. But I just find that the functionality of Bootstrap 5 and the slightly smaller learning curve is why I continue to use Bootstrap Grid instead of using CSS Grid directly. However, most front end engineers that I know who are senior and have been doing this for a while would totally scoff at me not using CSS Grid itself and say, just learn CSS Grid. That's the more powerful one. Go and do that. So totally up to you. Bootstrap Grid is kind of my comfort zone, and I find the right balance between not being too hard to learn, but still being powerful enough to be able to support everything that I need out of it. However, Flexbox and CSS Grid, if you are looking to level up your front end skills, and you think like front end's my jam, that's where I want to be, like I want to be one with the browser and be able to do any kind of layout. Flexbox and CSS Grid are definitely worth learning. Next week I will introduce a learning resource called Flexbox Froggy, which is all about, hey, how do I use just straight up CSS to get things laid out the way I want? And you literally just have to move a frog and the lily pad all around using Flexbox in order to get things to line up. So that's a resource that I'll share in one of the outlines next week. I don't think it's quite worth doing like a required homework assignment for, just because I find the Bootstrap grid to be powerful enough for me. But there are definitely avenues that you can go down for that.
Okay, yeah. No, so far the Bootstrap grid, it seems very convenient once you wrap your head around it. It's kind of straightforward.
Convenient is the best way to think about it, and when you go onto a website, once you kind of get your head around the grid layout, it's very hard to go on any website and be like, oh, that's using the grid, right? Like you just see it right off the bat. And so that's why I chose to teach grid. And a lot of people will say, no, go learn all of the CSS methods and go learn the 5 different ways you can position something in CSS and then eventually graduate into the grid system. And for me, it's like, well, every website I build is with a grid. So instead of saving that for the end, why don't we just teach that kind of shortcut right off the beginning? Because layout is probably arguably the most important the most important part of style is being able to lay everything out easily. And so that's why I teach the grid kind of so early on. And I kind of take the approach of like, let's just build a project. What do you need to know to build this website? Because in 2 weeks from now, you're going to have a weather site built, the feedback website built, Syracuse.com style news site built, a Netflix homepage built, and an Amazon product page built. And if you can build all 5 of those, what more of CSS or HTML do you really need to learn if you're able to build something as practical as those pages? So I know it's kind of jumping into the deep end a little bit of saying like, hey, let's do very quick HTML and CSS concepts, just enough to get you started, but then kind of trying to teach you all through the projects and augmenting that with Free Code Camp. So that's kind of my approach to learning all of that and teaching all of that. It may be kind of a shock method of like, hey, let's throw this all at you, and then you get to the end of it and you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize how much I had learned in that 3-week period. And then we go into JavaScript, which is computer science fundamentals. And I'm going to try and do that same method, right? Of like, let's get you going through projects. Yes, we're going to go over basic terminology, have a basic intro to it, but let's get you to projects as soon as possible, because I really think that projects are the best way to learn. And then we're just going to keep repeating that process over with backend programming and with database programming. And before you know it, we're going to be at the end of the program, and you're going to have a capstone to apply all of those concepts through.
Great, thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, so I know you said you can use like /br break to like kind of move a line of text down. This might have been something you already addressed in class and I just missed it, but is there an alternative that like makes something equally spaced so that you don't have to do like 3 breaks in a row to get the positioning correct?
Yeah, so the line there is if you are working with text, right? Line breaks are the way to go. And so if you are if you're just saying like, hey, I want a new paragraph down here, let me just put in 2 break tags because I just want a little bit more of a gap, break tags are fine to use there. However, as soon as you get into layout, even though it's accomplishing the same thing of, oh, I just want to move this down a little bit more, that's when you should start putting things in their own div and using CSS margin and padding to adjust the spacing. So at the end of the day, it achieves the same thing, right? Hey, there's a little white space here. It happens to be 15 pixels big. It doesn't matter if I put that in with a break tag or if I use 2 divs and adjusted the margin. But the way I kind of think about it is if I am only dealing with text, it's fine to use a break tag. But if I'm thinking about this as like, I would really like to take this and just push it down 40 pixels or push it down a certain amount in a layout, that's when I should switch over and use a div instead of using my breaks.
Cool, thanks.
And that brings up another great point of, I work with a team of developers, and there are times that they will push up code, and I'm like, what is this doing? And I open it, and I'm like, oh, that you built exactly what I asked you to build. I would not approach it this way. And I go through the code, and I'm like, oh, well, that would have taken me 5 lines of code to do, and you did it in 1, right? And like the grid system was the first time that I saw that, where I was like, oh, if you think through your layout before you put in any of your content, all of a sudden the content becomes much easier to manage. And so same thing with line breaks, right? Like the end of the day, it achieves the same thing, but generally the cleaner code is considered line breaks are only for text related layout issues. And then anything else that's more considered spacing, that's when you should get into using CSS instead of that line break. Another similarity there is using an HR tag as opposed to putting a border on something. And it's like, okay, if I really want to break this page up into different sections and have lines between them, I'm going to use that HR or the header row to break it up. But if I'm thinking more about this as, oh, I've got different columns and I would like a border around them to make them feel more independent, that's when I'm going to draw that line, pun semi-intended there, and go into a CSS and a border instead. And so that's how you kind of want to think about it. Is this breaking up my content in a, you know, is this breaking up my content in a content way, or is this some styling that I'm applying to my content? And as soon as you cross that line, that's when you go, maybe I should put that in a div so I can have a class or an ID on it. Or, this is when I should start applying CSS as opposed to more inline content kind of thing. Great question, though. Other questions? I don't mind someone hogging all the office hours as long as they're asking good questions. So feel free if you've got a couple queued up. And I will say for future office hours, if you ever can't attend an office hours but still want me to answer a question, feel free to Slack it to me in advance and I'll just answer it so it's in the recording.
I'm still not able to do the live share. And when I did the, do you mind if I share my screen? Is that okay?
Please go for it.
Okay. When I did this part over here, that where it's, well, how do I get back to it? It was here. And it shows that I have the live share in the server on there. And I saw that with someone else, they were able to kind of click over here and it was like in this drop down, I don't have it.
Okay, so go ahead and click on live server for me.
Live server.
Okay, and then click on live share. Very odd. Okay, let's try. No, it's the right one. Let's try and uninstall. And then reload required. Go ahead and click on that. It's gonna just reboot it for us. And then go ahead and search for live share. And install the top one. And then try quitting out of your VS Code entirely and popping it back open. So over to the code, and then you should be able to drop down to quit.
Oh, I'm sorry. So go to code and then go to quit.
Yep, you got it. And then pop it back open. And right click there. Yep. Very odd. Let's try something. Go ahead and quit out of your VS Code. And then go to Finder down in the bottom. And Applications. And then scroll down to the bottom there.
Sorry. Hold on. I need to move our picture over here. Hold on.
No problem. I know it's a lot to juggle on one monitor.
And then what would you like
just scroll down all the way to the bottom, and VS Code should be towards down there.
Oh, my VS Code isn't in here.
Okay, so there's our problem, is that because you're running VS Code from somewhere other than the applications folder, it's not installing the extension properly.
Oh my goodness. I saw that. I mean, I didn't see it here. I saw when we talked about it. And I didn't check mine because I said, oh, I'm good. I figured it was here. So would I just do a search in Finder to see like where my VS Code is?
Yeah, check. The only other place I could think it would be is either in your downloads or your desktop.
Right.
It
All right,
may
let me go back over.
it may be easier to just download a fresh copy of it,
Mm-hmm.
because you're still going to be able to open all the files you've created.
Okay.
But if you can't find it on your desktop or downloads, I would just install a fresh copy. Just, do a search for VS Code download.
Okay.
And then the other thing I would recommend is removing whatever version you have from your dock before you install the new one, just to
Okay.
make sure you're not accidentally opening the wrong one.
Okay. All right. So I'll work on that and that should work.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, and if
Thank
you've got
you.
any problems getting that installed or getting that set up, let me know.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Has
Any
free code camp been updated from last year? Has there been a change that you know of?
Probably. Free Code Camp tends to do updates pretty regularly. And right when I think I've got the resources that I want students to go through, they update it again, and I have to find things. So there's a good chance that it got updated.
Okay, because I feel like mine might be pulling in from when I worked on it last year. And so like when you guys are specifying, do the 28 modules here, do the 44, the 28, I was able to do that, but the 44, I don't see that it only has 4. So should I I don't know
So
what I
it's a
should.
web resource. I think if you click on the number 4, it will expand the whole list and give you
Mhm.
access to the whole 44.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Let me just go in to confirm that.
Yeah, because it showed check in.
Yeah, so right here, it should show like, 0 of 28 or 4 of 44. But if you just click
Yes.
on expand course, it will show you the couple that you've already completed. And then you can just
Mhm.
go to whatever one is next in that list, and you should be able to kick it off from there.
Okay. Yeah, because I was trying to do even the ones that I might have done before. I wanted to redo them,
Yep.
to make sure that I got my practice in. So,
Yeah.
okay.
If you have any trouble with that, feel free to just share your screen and we can figure out what's going on.
Okay. Thank you. I'm gonna do the VS Code thing first though.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem. Other questions? How do we feel like class went to this week? Were there any like light bulb moments, any triumph moments, any oh my god, why am I doing this program moments?
I feel like after I oh sorry I feel like after I learned how to manage my Mac better, um that made things a lot easier, like organizing the different desktops, because now I can have one. I set it up so that one of the desktop screens is Zoom, the other one's my code in my window, and then the third one's what you're doing. And that was taking up so much time before, just switching them off, and they would all disappear, and then I would fall behind and not even hear like where we were. So it just was a huge mess.
Yeah, the I don't do a postmortem after every class because after every class I don't feel like someone died a little bit inside. But during that class it was like, all right, we've got some things to address here. And after every class I do have a running list of like, all right, here are things for cohort 4 that I want to do a little bit better, right? And it's just like general bullet points and stuff like that. And one of the major things that I put on there was like, let's do Mac window management on like day 1 in person, right? Where it's like, hey, all this software development lifecycle stuff is great and we should cover that, but really we want to be like, if we're going to be in person, we should tackle that in person on day one so you can get comfortable. So by the time we're doing all of the remote work, you've got a better handle on, oh, I've got 10 windows here that I've got to manage and get between. And part of that is just the learning curve of becoming a developer, of like, developers always have a lot of windows open. And it does become nuts, but it is also a very personal thing of like, hey, let me figure out virtual desktops may be my thing, but other people may want to minimize, right? And they are just really good at minimizing or juggling different windows and parts of their screen or whatever it is. So I'm glad that was a unroad blocker for you, right? Of optimizing that. And I think that's something that we'll add even earlier in the curriculum. Before we dive into, you need to have 40 windows open, so at least you can manage them a little better.
Yeah, because I know in the beginning of the thing it said familiarize yourself with the Mac, but I didn't really know what that meant, or like what exactly it's like, okay, know how to open files, know how to organize desktop. I didn't even know that was a thing where you could have different desktops. So I was like, yep, I'm good to go. I know how to click and let's go. But so definitely. Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons we added that file management step to the interview process. Is it's like, that was a very hard thing where like everyone involved in Hack Upstate was sitting around and it was like, but how do you test for computer literacy? Like, there are some red flags that we have with applicants where it's like, oh yeah, there's some more learning here that you need to do that we can't slow down enough to do. But at the same time, it's also like, but coming to a Mac is a legitimate learning curve, and not only are you learning a whole new operating system, you're also kind of asking the computer to do one of the most complicated things you can do on a computer, which is telling it how to program, or programming it. And so I'm glad that we had that slowdown and the recap on Wednesday to be like, all right, let's just pump the brakes here, because like, everyone's frustrated, right? It doesn't matter if you're a Mac power user. There's still things we need to identify here. And I think that's one of the unique things about our program is like, yes, you were learning how to be a full stack developer, but at the same time, there's a lot to becoming a developer outside of code itself. And that's why we try and get you on board with Slack, and we try and get you using project management tools and Trello, and we will put you in group projects and say you gotta complete this as a group, because once you hit the workforce, you won't be working as a sole developer 9 times out of 10. You will be working in a team. And so I think that's what's really unique about our curriculum is getting you through all of that.
Yeah, I agree about I agree with Stephanie about those tips. I've been using Mac for a long time, and I have never used multiple desktops. And I just know the gesture. I don't know what it's called when you can see everything that's open.
Mission control.
Like mission control. Like I've opened that accidentally when I, accidentally hit a function key and it goes to that. But to actually see how it can be useful for navigating when you have so many things open. So I mean, and I use Mac and I have a second monitor, and these were both like great management techniques, new to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it takes years to become a Mac power user, but I was just saying this in one of my one-on-ones of, it's very hard for me to go back to Windows now. I've been using a Mac for 15 years, and it's just like, what do you mean there aren't virtual desktops built in? Or like, but this is something that I use every day. My mouse actually has a button on the trackpad rest. And if you push this right here, it goes into mission control. And so I'm so used to using that and having that gesture on my trackpad that I'll be like on someone else's computer, and I'm like, but how do you get all the windows to show, And it's just like, there's no button on your mouse there for me to push down on my thumb and have it all open like that. So workflow is definitely a very individual thing. But at the same time, there's a reason why Mac is the dominant software development platform. And it's because the core operating system just works so much better for these programming fundamentals that it makes it easier as a developer to jump in and get started. So, it's easy for me to say, oh, getting a dev environment is always frustrating to get started. But I think at the core of it, it's just someone's got to show you those features, and if they don't, how do you ever find them or know that there's a better way? And that's kind of one of the rewarding things as a teacher, is to see those light bulb moments and see like, oh, maybe this isn't as bad as or as frustrating as I thought it was going to be. And so I appreciate you guys like keeping your cameras on and having those moments and like seeing the victory, even though you may be on mute. It's just that excitement is hard to contain and keep a straight face through. And so it's great to be able to share that with you guys.
Um, so yesterday was a good moment for me with the weather thing to get it to work, even though we had to go in the breakout room. But then having watched you and having done everything, when I got ready to create my files for the day, I kept creating a document and then I kept having to delete it. And then when I would go back, so that was a big struggle for me yesterday. And then I couldn't create the CSS that we were creating the file. I don't know, because I've done it the days before and I followed along. So I don't know what.
Were you able to get it working, or do you want to go through that now and see if you can do it on a screen share?
Yeah, I couldn't create after you guys did the feedback. I tried to create the CSS for that and I couldn't do it. And also we figured out in the breakout room that when you copy the code for us, when you're trying to type it in, you don't know where to indent. Is there a way? We don't know like how many spaces. Is there a way, or should we be counting that, or just lining the letters up? Because I think Nicole brought that up.
So indentation should be kind of standardized. You shouldn't be using the space bar. You should be using the tab key, and that's what's going to insert the right number of spaces for you. And then the general rule of thumb is whenever you go into an HTML element, so like whenever you have a div and then you're going to put a p tag inside of it, or you're going to do a div inside of a div, you should be using the tab key to move it over. If you're using spaces instead, even if you use one space, it can kind of confuse all of VS Code and not know how many tabs you want to be going in. So if you get more consistent about using the tab key instead of spaces, that may help with the indentation a little bit.
Okay, it wasn't my but yeah, I do know, I am familiar with tab. It wasn't my question, but it didn't make sense. The question made sense, so I figured I would ask it. Okay, so week. So when I got here,
yep,
I was having a problem with day 4, and I couldn't figure out why.
So you want to probably be in VS Code here, not in Finder.
Okay.
And the reasoning behind that is like once you're in VS Code, you're in code land, but when you're in Finder, you're only in file land. So it looks like you got your feedback.html file created, which is good.
Right.
And now what you would want to do is if you hover over week 2, you see that little new file icon. You want to click on that. Yep. And then you're going to want to create feedback-style.css. And just watch your spelling there. It looks like you missed a D.
You said dash
style.css.
I can't type while everybody's watching. .css.
Yep. and hit enter on that.
And see, you know what? The hashtag is there. So this is the thing. When I was by myself, and this keeps happening, every time I'm alone, things don't work. And then
So
when I'm with others,
I will say the hashtag won't show up until you type in the .css.
yes, that's right. But when yesterday it wasn't
Okay,
coming out.
and now that you've got that, let's go pop open your feedback.html and let's see what you have in that file.
I copied and pasted what you put.
Oh, you little cheater. Oh, I mean,
No, but listen, because I was like, okay, I gotta retype this, but at least I will have an idea of what I gotta retype.
it's all good. So if you scroll up to the top there, the important thing that I wanted to check yeah, you got it. Scroll up to the link tag in the head. You just want to make sure that that CSS file is matching the CSS file name that we created right here, which it does. So you should
Okay.
be in good shape now to get started from there.
Right. Until I master this, or until I can get it, I gotta.
I think that's important to touch on too, is like we're in week 1 of HTML and CSS. And not only do we have 2 more weeks of HTML and CSS where you guys are going to be learning hands-on and practicing the syntax and all of that, you're going to be using HTML and CSS all the way through to the end of the program as well. So this is something where like a lot of people see me type and they're like, he's a wizard, he's a guru, he's an expert, he's a genius. I'm never going to be able to get to that, right? And then all of a sudden you're going to get to week 20 and then you're going to be like laughing and you're going to be like, remember when I couldn't type a single HTML tag and now my eyes are like laser focused to find the end tags? Caitlin can attest to that too. It's like she went through the exact same program that you guys do, and now she's working, full time as a software developer. And it's like you laugh because you struggle with it so much now, but just the difference that 3 weeks of experience is going to be typing this, your muscle memory is one of those things that you don't realize is you're getting better at until you have it, right? And so this syntax does get easier, and it does get to the point where it's not like you ever start thinking like the computer, but when you start saying indentation's important because if I can't read it, I'm not going to be able to find where the computer can't read it. And you just get in that swing of things of, oh, VS Code actually put my cursor in the right spot to help me out. Or, oh, when I hit the enter button, there's a reason VS Code dropped me down on an indentation level, right? And all of a sudden you get to the point where it just flows. And that's when you start picking up on the debugging a little bit easier and figuring out that slash is causing the problem and all of that stuff. So I can't tell you how to get to that level other than just time and practice helps a lot.
When I do the free code camp,
Yep.
I can do it, but it's slow. When I do the free code camp, I watch the videos, I look at the hints, I do all of that, but it's on kind of like my pace. So like yesterday and the day before, I had a lot of aha moments where I was like, okay. But I just think that, like you said, it's gonna take time and a level of confidence. And then two, it's like we got 2 screens now, and I'm still trying to figure out, got the extension, and then, one wrong click and something goes away and you're going and we're talking. And it's like, you're sitting there like, okay, wait, your whole world is shattered because now you're trying to get back to where you need to be. And
Yep.
sometimes that you don't want to disrupt the whole class because you in one spot because you think, okay, and now I hit F3 a lot, but sometimes F3 doesn't bring me back to where I genuinely, where I left off. So, but I mean, like you said, this was just week 2, and I've seen, like yesterday I did an activity and I saw things changing colors and doing all kinds of stuff. So I'm feeling good about myself. It's just that I gotta get like Max. So I'm not like Max yet, but I gotta get there.
It's a goal that I've heard a lot of students shoot for, and we'll get there with time. There's a reason our program's paced the way it is. We've got plenty of time left in HTML and CSS, and one of the students had a great recommendation of, hey, if there's an assignment that I can do in advance that's going to prep me for the upcoming week, that should be posted on Friday, not on Monday, right? Like if there's something that I can learn and then relearn in class, and I think that's a great idea. So we're going to try and get better at labeling those assignments as like, hey, if you want to get a jump start on this, it's not due until, not that Sunday, but the following Sunday. But if you want to get a jump start, get exposure to these concepts, and then see me teach them as a second layer, and then the homework be your third layer, that's great, right? So we're going to start labeling assignments that way of, this isn't due for over a week from now, but if you want to get a jump start, you can. Or labeling an assignment as like, hey, don't try this yet. We're going to do this in class, and you're going to already have a leg up because you've started it. Or, hey, this is a traditional homework assignment. You got to do this after class, play around with it, figure it out. And I am going to try and balance it out so we've got that kind of bigger homework assignment. We call it the reverse classroom model, or the industry does, of, hey, why don't we have you learn the concepts on your own at your own pace, and then when you come into class, that's when you can try and do your homework and actually say, I'm stuck here. And so that's kind of the model that we're aiming to do, and I think posting those assignments in advance are really going to give you a good chance to balance out your weekend and say, hey, do I need to be spending more time reviewing the concepts from this week, or can I spend a part of my weekend getting a jump start on next week's concepts? And everyone learns obviously a different pace, a different style, and all of that. But we are going to try and get those assignments posted a little bit earlier. So that way, if you do want to get a jump start, you can.
So another thing that was aha was like, and I made notes. I'm looking at my notes. So like style and elements, and like when you use the style, and then the class, when you use the dot, and then the like red/text and all of that stuff. And then I was able, like doing the free code camp, I was able to write down, yesterday I did some stuff with hexadecimals. I would have never thought, you know what I mean? Like in my mind, in my lifetime, I'm like, I would have never even thought. So doing the homework doing the stuff I was doing. So I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. So now I've seen it. So if you're typing and you're putting a hashtag and then all these letters and then these colors appear, it's not going to be foreign. So I think pre-work would be good. And then our work we do, and then post, I guess we call it post work. I'm nervous now about going back to common space, because we won't have I mean, I'll have my iPad, but you know what I mean? Like I've gotten, like I was feeling real good, even though last week was okay. I was feeling really good. Like, okay, I got this. Seems like I got a new desk, so I was feeling like the web developer. But next week, I'm like, oh God, who am I going to be next week? I mean, Christy with a MacBook and an iPad.
So the good news is like, there's the TV at Common Space, and hopefully my code will be big enough up on that monitor where like you won't need to necessarily have the live share going on. I do think virtual desktops will help a lot with that, of like, let me just swipe back and forth. I know, when I was back in college, that was my key to getting so much done, right? Was that like I could have a couple windows open per desktop, and then it was easier to jump around and go, all right, my notes are over here and the slides are over here, and keeping that separated. The iPad works as a great second monitor. But yeah, I think it will work out. I do know there are, you hear about this great resignation going on, and a lot of people not wanting to go back to the workforce. because they have worked remotely and been so productive for so long, and they get into their desks, and get everything set up at home, and then go into the office, and they're like, I can't believe I did this for a couple years, like my sweet spot is my office, and that's where I'm productive. But I think it's also very polarizing, right? Because I think there are a lot of people who are like, oh my God, I can't spend another minute in my house. Like, get me out of here. I need to be back in the office. I need to be, back with people again. And so a lot of, not only a lot of employees, but a lot of employers are also trying to figure out that balance, right? Of, well, are you meeting with clients? Is there a real reason to have you back in the office? Should we consider a smaller office space? And I know a lot of employers who have done that poorly and are now losing their talent, their employees, because they're not thinking that through and trying to work with them. So, as much as the employee-employer relationship is important, it's also important to listen to employees, listen to where the market is headed, and try and balance that all into how you treat your employees.
True. Okay, I'm muting myself. I'll give somebody else a turn.
Going back to the F3 key, so I can use the gesture on the trackpad to go to
Three finger swipe up.
for me it's 4 because I have 3 set to drag.
Oh, okay. So then, yes, that would make it 4. I had always thought it was 4, and then I went into my trackpad and was shocked to find that it was 3. So I think even if you have it set to 3 and use 4, it will still work with 4.
Got it. But my function key 3 doesn't work. When I hit that, I get like the error sound. Or
if you hit function in the bottom left of your keyboard, and then hit F3. Then,
okay, I was doing it on my other keyboard. I'm doing the laptop. F3. Nope, same thing there.
Okay, so
on the laptop, just hit F3. If you have an external keyboard, you have to hit function F3. I think that might be the trick.
My external keyboard doesn't have function. Only the laptop has the function key.
Okay,
Oh.
so on the laptop, if you
Weird.
just hit F3 without the function key, does it do what you want?
It does.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
right. I reversed them. Yes.
That might be. I mean, mine does the same thing. So that's how I don't know why though. I didn't change it.
So, but it doesn't work on the external keyboard.
I'm surprised that your external keyboard doesn't have a function key.
No, it has function keys like F1.
But it doesn't have the FN in the
other
bottom left.
button. Oh, interesting.
You know what? It's a PC keyboard that, in the keyboard preferences, I had to tell it where command was, and so maybe it's just mapped differently, and maybe the Mac doesn't recognize the function.
I have a hybrid one that works for Mac and Windows. They do make those, and it has all the keys.
If you go into system preferences, Doug, and look in keyboard, right up at the top, it should say use F, or in the middle, say use F1, F2 as standard function keys. You could check to see if toggling that changes your external keyboard, but the Mac doesn't give you a ton of options. Doesn't give you a ton of options of what the F keys are going to be doing, especially if the external keyboard doesn't have the FN key.
Okay. Yeah, no, turning that off does not make it aware of the external keyboard. But I at least now I know what's going on. I had that turned on for my laptop, so.
Yep.
Mystery solved. Thank you.
No problem. There may also be a way if you go into the shortcuts tab while in keyboard and click on mission control over on the left, you'll see there's a little keyboard shortcut over on the right, and mine happens to be the control arrow and the up key. So on your external keyboard, you can try hitting Control and up and see if that brings you into mission control. Beautiful.
That did it. And then control down, put it back to normal.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? This is what office hours is totally for, just exploring around, kicking through things. So you're like, is that one thing that bugged me in class and I forgot about it until now? So always happy to address those questions, or during one-on-ones too.
If no one else has another question right now, I have a question. I don't know if it's okay to ask this yet, but can you, in simple terms, explain what a server is?
Sure.
Or does? Like, I have a vague idea, or like when it's needed, I kind of have an idea, but I don't have a concrete idea of what it is.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm happy to address that because we touched on this a little bit in, the first day or two of class of full stack, and we talked about what a server-side programming language is. But it's a great question of like, when do you need a server, right? And so,
yeah, for VS Code, we have to activate the virtual server,
live server.
Live server in order to run.
And live server is a virtual server, so you're also not wrong in that. So a server is just a computer that is connected to the internet and is usually always on. And so a server is just another, it's like a subset or a subclass of computers. They tend to be designed to support multiple users at the same time. And that is really the differentiator of when you need a server or not. So if you're running Facebook, right, and you have one user who wants to upload a photo, and then you want to have another user come on at another time in the app, be able to sign in and see the photo that you uploaded, that server is acting as kind of the middleman, right? So instead of me trying to connect to your computer to get your photos, well, what happens if your computer is offline, right? What happens if you're not connected to the internet? So a server is just a specialized set of computers. They tend to be a little bit more powerful, have a faster network connection, have a faster CPU, have more storage space. But they are just computers set up to have multiple users connect into them. So Facebook has, I would say thousands, but they probably have millions of servers running, right? And what they are set up to do is just have users be able to upload information to the server and then have other users be able to connect to that same server and retrieve the information. So the first time that we'll need a server in class is we're going to build a chat room application, right? Where you can send a message and everyone else who's connected to that same server is going to be able to see that message. Well, you can't really do that because what we call peer-to-peer connections aren't really something that computers are built to do, especially with the cloud being so big right now. And so what servers are doing, servers are really, if you peel back the marketing layer behind what the cloud is, the cloud is really just a bunch of servers sitting together in a network, and that network tends to just be the internet. So a server can, you need a server to run a database that multiple people can connect to. You need a server to send and receive API messages so that servers can talk to other servers or servers can talk to individual users in the browser. So when we will need it first is connecting not only multiple users together, but connecting multiple users to one database that all the users can access that one database. But at the end of the day, it's just a server is just a specialized computer, and we can run a virtual server or a simulated server or an emulated server on our own computers because the server is just a special type of computer, right? And so when we click live server, what it's really doing is opening a server on a specific port. And so when you look in your browser, it says 127.0.0.1, that's an IP address, or localhost. Those two mean the same thing. They're just saying, hey, look on my own computer for this, and look on port 5500. And that is kind of like if 127.0.0.1 is your street name, the port number is your house number. And that's saying, okay, where on this street do I want to be looking for, this server? And what that server is doing is just serving up your code. And the reason why the server is a little bit better at serving your code than if you just double click on the file is the server can live refresh and say, hey, there's a new version of this code. Hey, browser, refresh and pull the latest version of it. And so that's one of the benefits of running a server as opposed to just pulling the file off your local computer. But we'll be diving much further into that once we get Node set up. Node.js is a server-side programming language, and we'll start looking at all of that. The other thing is Ryan Goss comes in week 9, week 10, somewhere in there. And he talks all about APIs. So it is week 10 is APIs. And so Ryan's going to come in and introduce you to the lay all the groundwork for APIs. You're going to learn all about them, stopping short of how to make an API. But what you're going to do is use the New York Times bestseller API to go talk to a server and pull in some external information into your own website. And that kind of sets you up to understand how you can get your apps talking to the internet. And then we kind of reverse the tables and say, okay, now that you've used an API, let's talk about learning how to build an API. And that's when we're going to start getting into Node and servers. And then later on, Nathan comes back in for DevOps and says, hey, remember how we deployed a static website to a server in DevOps week 1, which is, part 1, which is week 6. Now Nathan's going to come back in towards the end of the program and say, now we're going to deploy a full-scale server that's got a database that you're running and connecting to and has your own API that's sending some information out from the database and has layered in authentication and sign-ins and users and all of that. So we try and spread out our DevOps week so that you get an intro to DevOps and can deploy a website to a server. And then later on in the program, we come back to that and say, hey, website servers are great, but we can deploy API servers and database servers and get you running in the cloud and kind of go from there. That was a very long answer. Did that answer your question?
It did. I mean, I wasn't able to follow all of it, and I had more questions, but it just the idea that the server is sort of handing stuff off, taking stuff in and handing it off, and
yes,
accessing databases, and it's like a hub.
Hub and spoke model is definitely how you want to think about the cloud, right? So the hub is the server in the center, and then the spokes are all the users that are connecting into that one central point.
Okay, and we're going to go deeper into this later in the program.
Absolutely. Yep, we're going to go deeper into how to set up a basic server or how to deploy your website. And then we're going to go into how to deploy an API, how to use an API, how to build an API, how to deploy an API, and how to add a database server into your API. And those are all very much things that we will be covering and are some of my favorite topics in our curriculum. So if you think I'm enthusiastic now, wait until we get to even more technical concepts.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Go ahead, Christy.
I have a question. You held up a mouse.
Yep.
What would you recommend? Because it would be nice to have a mouse where I can touch things and things reorganized. Since I have a million monitors, I don't need to buy a monitor, so I can use my what I heard people talking about a trackpad. There's another trackpad you can have outside of the.
So Apple actually there are some people who love trackpads so much over mice that Apple now sells an external trackpad that you can buy that is literally like the trackpad that's built into your laptop. It's just external and sits outside of it. And that tends to be used more by people who like their laptop trackpads and then have a desktop computer. Or they, have their, like, I've got my laptop over to the side and I just use my two main monitors. So like my laptop lid is closed. I can't even use my trackpad. And if I did, I'd be like reaching all the way over here to use my trackpad. So Apple does sell an external trackpad. I believe they are the only company, at least that I know of, that sells a trackpad. For the mouse, I use the Logitech MX Master. I'm on the 3rd generation of it. I will drop a link to it. And I will say the Logitech MX Master 2 is a lot cheaper, and is not a huge difference. With that said, this is like the highest end that you can go for mice. The one that I use is $100, and it's like really not that different from a $40 Logitech mouse that you could buy. But it's one of those things where I'm like, I spend 12 hours a day on my computer, and most of that time is with my hand on a mouse. It's like the whole justification of you spend a third of your life on a mattress, so is it worth, spending a little extra money and getting a decent one? So, totally up to you. I'm going to drop it in the live stream channel. Totally personal preference of where you want to spend your stipend or where you want to spend your money there. But the MX Master is kind of like the highest end that you can go for computer mice.
Is it universal?
It is.
So it might be worth it.
Yes, it says Apple, Mac, and Windows computers.
I have a Logitech mouse. I might have one. I need to go look. I am a little gadget junkie. So I'm gonna check my mouse. I have 2. I have a keyboard too. I'm gonna check those first, but it would be nice to have, trying to take your fingers and touch and control and all that stuff is sometimes gets to be a little tedious.
Yeah, and we'll probably ask you guys later in the program for a picture of your like workstation if you feel you don't have to share. It's totally a requirement. Totally not a requirement. Excuse me. I will share with you guys. I'll post it in the live stream channel what the other side of the camera looks like.
I have a new desk and I can stand up or sit down. So I'm a little excited about that. So I'll definitely be willing to share a picture. I just put it together the other day.
Nice. Yeah, I shared a picture of my setup. This is not my permanent setup, but it's one I've been working from a while. So it's a lot more streaming oriented, but that's in case anyone is interested. It's my baby. A lot of people call them their battle stations because they spend so much time there. And it's definitely something that has taken years and years for me to build up and figure out. And of course, I'm still adding to. I just got a new microphone today. I'm a little bit of an audio engineer junkie myself, and so I've got a problem with cutting myself off and saying I've got to perfectly find everything. Why am I upgrading? And it's just that allure of being able to find something new and better. Any other questions for office hours? I know we're a little bit over, but I'm happy to stick around if there are any more.
Going once.
Going twice? Going to people who are sick of me after 2 weeks? Don't worry, we will have other instructors come in. week 6, Nathan Evans is coming in, and he'll be teaching all about DevOps. There are topics in our curriculum that I am technically qualified to teach, but that doesn't mean I should be the one teaching them. And DevOps is the first week for that, where Nathan's going to come in with years and years of professional experience and kind of introduce you to the cloud and getting your code running somewhere off of your computer and publicly accessible. He's going to go through buying a domain with you guys and linking up DNS, the domain name system. So basically telling your domain how to get to your web hosting and how to configure all of that. So that's the first week you can look forward to not hearing me talk for at least 12 hours a week straight. Awesome. Well, I will leave it there. You guys have an awesome weekend. As always, if you have any questions on homework as they pop up, or on Free Code Camp as you're going through that, or on anything that we did throughout the week, always feel free to hit me up on Slack. I know a couple of you guys have one-on-one scheduled, so if you do, I will see you there. Otherwise, I will see you on Monday virtually in Common Space, but hopefully you guys will all be there. And if not, just tune in virtually.
Enjoy your weekend.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Have a good
Bye,
one.
everyone.